Right, this was the second meeting of CryptoSI DAODAO. This one was kind of like an impromptu meeting, so maybe we can call it meeting number 1.5, where we discussed the actual structure of the DAO. So we discussed the use cases and the reason for being of SubDAOs and how the main DAO can control the SubDAOs, how the SubDAOs can control themselves, whether or not they can control their sister DAOs. What would be dangerous factors in creating SubDAOs, how we can try to minimize and, well, in a perfect world, eliminate voter fatigue. It was just quite a lot discussed. So enjoy and yeah, let's keep building.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. We are running a little bit late. We are 3 minutes behind. It's my fault because of my technical difficulties and delays. This is the second Discord meeting for the CryptoSI DAODAO. We are going to be discussing some theoreticals. I will repeat, we're discussing some theoreticals before the actual DAO is launched. I am joined by Cause Less Harm and Peter Stephen Brown. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your attendance. I'll start with you, Cause Less Harm. Thanks very much for attending. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, doing well. Sorry about the mix-up from yesterday, but glad to be here today.
Yes, I did make the mistake of, for some reason, I assumed you was in America. You've got one of those strange, I don't know if it's soft Irish accents that.
No, so I'm originally from Toronto, but I've been in the UK for about 20 years, so I've got this really weird accent that's a mixture of both.
Yeah, yeah, which completely threw me. So I assumed you was in America, but I assumed you started here and moved there. So I was talking on Eastern Seaboard time, and you were talking on British Summer Time, which is obviously the best time in the world. And somehow we managed to get our wires crossed.
All good. We're here today.
Exactly. Peter, how are you? Just a little mic check.
I'm good, thanks. Great. My signal might be intermittent because I'm driving at the moment, but yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hope everyone's well.
Okay, good. I hope you're driving hands-free and not breaking any laws in the good old UK.
Of course. Of course.
Good. Right, okay, so today we're going to be discussing DAO structure. I have shared, I believe, let me see if I can do it here. I should be able to do it here, shouldn't I? All right, let me share. I'm going to share a document which is our meeting agenda for today. The plan is to discuss three vague topics, but basically it's around the formation of CryptoSI DAODAO and in the future, theoretically, how we would structure the other DAOs, be they SubDAOs, or I don't know if you have sister DAOs or side DAOs. I don't really know how it works, and that's the reason why we have our resident expert, Cause Less Harm, and we are going to get to the bottom of this. So the first topic, I guess, was how to launch CryptoSI DAODAO. Now, I'm under the impression, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say what the plan is, and then I guess Cause Less Harm, I will then defer to you for further guidance. So the plan is to launch CryptoSI DAODAO as an initial DAO with either a 10% of the 10% of the initial voting tokens to be with one person or in a multi-sig, if that is possible. And then from there, we will then launch the other DAOs. But initially, the plan is to launch one single DAO, which has voting only, not NFTs. And then in the future, we will launch SubDAOs. The first DAO to be launched will have a small amount of the actual tokens available for voting. And from there, we will initiate the distribution once we've decided how that should take place. Is that a feasible way to launch the DAO, or are there better ways to do so?
Very, very feasible. I think so. I think it's worth taking a step back. And my approach when thinking about DAO structure is, if we look at what the DAO is going to be like, say 5 years down the line, when there are more members, one of the things that you really want to get away from is having every member have to vote on proposals for every little thing. And this could be sending a new member tokens, or it could be managing like a staking rewards contract or something like that. And so one way that you can get around that is you have your main DAO, call it CryptoSI DAO, and then you have like an admin SubDAO. And this is what I've set up on my DAO. I can share this if you whatever. I'll share it after. It doesn't really matter. But in my DAO, I've got this. And so what I did was, with the main DAO, I minted all the tokens to this admin SubDAO, and then that admin SubDAO is responsible for distributing the tokens to all the members. Now, when we talk about SubDAOs, just to like clear the air and make sure that everything is that you understand, like the main DAO always has full control over the SubDAO. It just means that the SubDAO can perform actions without needing the input of absolutely every member of the DAO. So let me leave it at that for a second. Just this idea that we want to be thinking about minimizing or eliminating voter fatigue where possible, and only having the broad membership vote on proposals, I guess, that are pertinent to them, and not necessarily on little admin tasks or subgroups. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does actually. My first question is, if you minted all of the tokens to the admin SubDAO, how can you then do anything with the main DAO? Because you won't have any.
So assuming that the main DAO is a token-based DAO,
yeah.
And I can't remember exactly what you said. I think you said 100 billion tokens. Yep. Regardless, doesn't matter. If the main DAO is a token-based DAO, and if you mint 100% of the tokens to the admin SubDAO is a multi-sig. I didn't say that. And so then within the multi-sig, you can then distribute those tokens. In order to make any changes to the main DAO, you need to be a member. In order to be a member of the main DAO, then you'd need to have tokens staked in that DAO. So I appreciate this is convoluted. It's really not as complex as I'm making it. But like, if you had one CryptoSI, I can't remember what it was, CRDD, was that the token?
Right. Yep, CRDD.
Yep. So if you had one CRDD staked in the main DAO, then that makes you a member of that DAO, and you could then create proposals and vote on them if you wanted to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does actually. Okay. Okay.
And
right.
the other option, obviously, you don't need to mint 100% to the SubDAO, but you could mint a portion to the SubDAO to manage all these administrative tasks, and then get the main DAO to vote on distributing more to the admin SubDAO in the future, if that's what you wanted to do. Yeah. But to your point, as an individual wallet, you'd need to have tokens staked within the main DAO in order to make any changes to it.
Right. Okay. So I guess what we could do is have the majority of the tokens minted to the main DAO, and then have a no. Then you could have an admin SubDAO. I guess you could have an admin SubDAO which has the 10% of the tokens. Have that SubDAO actually be an NFT DAO, whereby I guess you mint, I don't know, between 5 to 10 NFTs, and then you've got, I guess, a council of sorts, like a launch team, let's say. Now that launch team then puts forward, or between them, they decide on the launch process, and then they put forward the launch process to the main DAO, being the only people that can vote on it. So once they've decided within themselves what the launch process is, they put that forward to the main DAO. The main DAO kind of has to accept it, so it's pretty much a formality. And then the main DAO then moves the tokens into another wallet in preparation for a distribution event. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's that sounds about right. I think what's important to remember, I think you're on the right track about the council. What's important to remember is the way that the DAO functions in the very, very early stages should be very different to how it will function, a year or two down the line when there's more membership.
Exactly.
And so in that case, whilst we, my assumption is that we're here because we appreciate decentralization.
Yeah.
What's important in the early stages is making sure that the DAO is secure, and that actions can be taken. There aren't malicious actors. You don't give someone more power than they need, or risk giving. And then in the future, you can change these things.
Yeah. I like to think of it as, at the beginning, like the DAO is like a baby, and a baby needs somebody to, I guess, steward it. Somebody needs to feed it. Somebody needs to, like, burp them, take them to bed, and all that kind of stuff, dress them and all that. So in that time, the level of decentralization will be a lot lower, whilst the DAO becomes bigger and becomes stronger until it's strong enough that it doesn't need this type of council approach. Initially, I think it's fair though, and I
think that's an awesome analogy. And then the other thing is the council can still stay in place in 2 years and be responsible for certain parts of the DAO, and the main membership can vote in members or vote to take out members.
Yeah.
So it can still act as an administrative.
Yes.
I don't want to say department, but an administrative DAO for the main DAO. It's just maybe its responsibilities are changed.
Yeah, because I guess that same admin SubDAO could be then responsible for, I don't know, like a company formation or a legal formation at a certain jurisdiction, because you've got your 5 to 10 people, and well, should they choose to at a later date become, should they choose to dox themselves at a later date, they can then go and set up some sort of foundation in some kind of jurisdiction somewhere. The good thing is that because the admin SubDAO is actually controlled by the main DAO, the people who are on that council will be voted in essentially by the main DAO. I guess I'll put an asterisk next to that, because I think you're correct, whereby voter fatigue is something that we really do need to consider.
This is my biggest piece is voter fatigue. I think it's extraordinarily important to think about.
Yeah.
Because one, it's hard to get people to be engaged with your DAO to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
If they're getting, notifications, or this stuff will expand, as DAO grows, but if they're getting notifications to vote on proposals that are just completely irrelevant to why they joined the DAO, and they're getting them on a regular basis, they're just going to start ignoring them. So what's really important is thinking about this from the early stages and trying to protect, I guess, that focus from the beginning, and making sure that the proposals that go to the main DAO are, important and pertinent to their interest.
With these SubDAOs, could we set up a sort of a representative plutocracy? I won't call it a democracy, whereby people can stake their DAOs. Let's say we got 3 separate SubDAOs. We got one that's called the conservative SubDAO, one that's called the liberal SubDAO, and one that's called the Labour SubDAO. Now you can stake your tokens that are identical to the main DAO's tokens. You can stake those within the conservative SubDAO, and the conservative SubDAO has got let's say 5 council members. So there's 5 people that can vote. So you stake within this conservative SubDAO. The 5 people that can vote, you clearly know who they are. That's why you've staked there. Now those 5 people, they are responsible directly for actually voting on all the proposals that come through on the main DAO, and it's because it's their job. They aren't going to be prone to voter fatigue, and the people who are staking also won't be prone to voter fatigue because they're not going to be voting on every single thing. They're just going to be allowing the people, the council, let's say, of the conservative DAO to be the ones to put their votes forward. Is that possible? Is it possible for SubDAOs to vote on main DAOs based on the tokens that they have got staked within their own particular DAO?
It's totally possible, and I can kind of figure out how it would work in my head. I don't know that it could be done out of the box currently, but the whole idea would be to have a SubDAO that kind of represents your interests, voting for you.
Yeah.
Right. And you stake with them because you think that they represent your interests. This is something that would be very useful to a lot of DAOs. And is it possible? Like anything is possible. One thing to remember about DAO is it is very, very early, and still building regularly. So there's still lots of features to come. Despite it being extraordinarily powerful as it is, I don't think, and I'll ask, but I don't think that out of the box we could do that right away. But it would just be a matter of developing a smart contract of some sort in order to make it work, and it wouldn't be that difficult because all the building blocks have already been built. It would just be about kind of sticking them together.
Okay. That, I guess, would be our own form of what they call liquid governance. So you'd be able to move your vote in and out of a particular delegate at will, and the only real issue we would have would be finding a way to incentivize those particular delegates. So incentivize the group that are called the Tories, or the groups that are the Liberals, or the groups that are Labour. And I guess we could figure out a way to do that with some kind of staking, maybe some sort of staking percentage goes to the delegate.
Yeah.
And,
you could do a reward of some sort. Liquid governance, who's currently doing it?
Nobody. I don't think anybody's doing it in crypto yet. It's just one of those things that's it's like an academics type thing, and then I think Google made a system, but they've never really used it anywhere. So I've not seen it work in the wild before.
Okay, because you could imagine too that it would be interesting. So say you delegate your vote to whatever representative. It would also be so it works kind of actually like validators, right? So currently validators vote on proposals on pretty much every chain in Cosmos, and their vote represents all the people who stake to them. However, if you want to, as a staker, you can vote using your own tokens or your own share. Right? So you can either, like, if you don't vote at all as a staker of Atom, then your vote is counted as whatever your validator votes. However, if you vote differently to your validator, then it reduces the weight of your validator's share, and you get your percentage counted. Which you'd want the same thing to be done here.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly how we'd want it. Exactly like that. So that they would be delegators, but or validators, sorry. But without the overall,
they're not running any infrastructure.
They're not creating blocks, and they're not doing all of the actual important. Well, I shouldn't say actual important stuff, but they're not securing the network, because there is no network. They are simply there to vote on your behalf. But on topics where you want to vote, then you should be able to vote separately.
Then you just do it.
But I feel like that might be more difficult to implement, and I'd be happy with a situation where you can just delegate first as like a stepping stone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we're probably making it more complicated than we need to at the moment. Like, these are things that start becoming issues as a DAO gets bigger, right, and grows in its early stages. I'm a big believer. So just my background is in startups. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started a whole bunch of businesses, and one of the big things that I've learned over my time is, especially in the beginning, keep it as simple as possible, because once you start bringing in complexities, one, you get distracted, but two, it's a lot more difficult to onboard people.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, just as from my experience, that it's a good idea to try and keep things as simple as possible in the early stages, and have these things, as things to work towards. But I think it would be, at a certain milestone, and I don't know what that milestone is, but once the DAO is more complex and there are more proposals being created, then you'd want to implement a system like that.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. All right. So I feel like we've covered the first thing of how to launch. I feel like we've got a decent idea of how to launch. The 5 to 10 people on the council, I'm going to start reaching out to Juno validators and see how many of them I can get involved. Obviously, with a view to them becoming the delegates in the future, but also with the sort of partnership, so that when the main DAO does decide to stake the tokens that it holds, it may stake them with these particular validators as their partners, if that is possible. So, for example, is it possible for the main DAO to hold Juno and then stake it with validators on the actual Juno network?
Yes, and in fact, any token, as soon as Polytone is released, which is in the coming weeks.
Right.
So you can hold any Cosmos token. Oh, sorry. You can hold any CosmWasm chain enabled Cosmos token and stake it to whichever validator. But yes, absolutely with Juno. Currently.
So CosmWasm at the moment, I think it's Juno and Neutron. Neutron is another one.
Juno, Neutron, Chihuahua, Stargaze, Osmosis. There's a couple other ones. They're just eluding me. Sorry.
Yeah. What about things like? Sorry to cut you, but what about?
No, not at all. Not at all.
What about things like providing liquidity on, let's say, some random DEX on another chain, or let's start off and not make it too complex. What about providing liquidity on a DEX on Juno? So say we have, I don't know, staked Juno and Juno on the Juno chain, can we provide those as liquidity to a DEX on Juno from the actual main DAO?
From the treasury, I believe so. I've never done it, but as far as I know, with Wind DEX, you can currently do that. So are we talking about providing liquidity for your own token or for other pools? I guess it doesn't really matter. It was more out of curiosity than anything else.
Yeah, I'd guess both. Yeah, I'd guess both.
Yeah.
So definitely for your own token, and then for others in the future.
So obviously, if your token is staked, and don't take my word. I'm not a big DeFi guy, so like I don't know everything about it at all. But
Okay.
if your token's staked, I think you're limited in what you could do. I don't know if there's liquid staking options on Juno or not. I've heard the term, but I don't know if it's here. But certainly, unstaked tokens in your treasury, can you interact with DEXs on Juno? Yes, you could interact with Osmosis. Is the biggest DEX in Cosmos, and we'll be onboarding with them, I think, within the next month or two. Right. So yes is the answer.
Okay, perfect. Right. Okay. What is the next topic? Right.
So like, can we take a step back just so that I can get an understanding? Because part of the DAO structure as well will be kind of or at least the minting will be dependent on how the distribution works. And so I think you previously spoke about like a sale, like a token sale of some sort.
Yep. I guess.
Or any.
I guess that
sorry,
a better term might be distribution or donations or things like that, because I guess being a little bit afraid of the Americans once you use the word sale.
I hear you. So one of the things that I've been looking into are private members associations, which get around some of these things. But
but they're limited, aren't they? So I think you can only have up to 99 of them, and between them they have to know who they are and things like that.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I guess it would be worth thinking about, like how much of the Genesis mint is being allocated to the donation structure or whatever. And where that sits, maybe this is probably getting into the weeds a bit too much. It was more just an interest-based thing. I think the high-level discussion of saying, take 10% and put it in the admin SubDAO is probably a reasonable thing.
Well, I think what we can do, I think what we can say is the things that we'll need to be quite certain about for the security of the DAO, and the main threat will be the 51% issue. So
correct.
When we do decide to distribute the tokens from the main DAO, I think any more than 49% of them will be dangerous. So I guess the plan would be that perhaps you have a 49% distribution event of which is free and open on a first come first serve basis, and then the other 51% falls under the control of the admin SubDAO. And I guess
so the 51% attack is only on staked tokens. So it would only be, I guess the way to look at it is whether the tokens are liquid, so that if they're available on a DEX, then that is when you worry about the 51%. But what you'd want to do, so as far as like the initial distribution of 49%, that it's only on staked tokens that you could perform a 51%. So my point in saying this is if you held back 51% of the tokens and they weren't staked, then that's not providing any security
Yeah.
against the 51% attack.
But then also you have to stake at least 51% of the tokens to be sure that you can't get 51% attacked. Because if we have a Genesis event where we give out 60% of the tokens, then and all of those 60% fall into someone's hands, and it doesn't matter how many we hold back and
Correct.
stake, because
You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, the risk of that is, like, I guess, especially if you're managing the distribution and ensuring that it's decentralized as much as possible.
and that's a double-edged sword, because the plan is to have the distribution be totally open. Like, we'll say no Americans allowed, obviously, but effectively, if we manipulate the distribution, then it's not open. But if we allow the distribution to be open, then there's a chance that someone comes in and just buys the whole lot immediately and tries to sink the ship. It's highly unlikely, but
yeah, it's possible. I guess the thing is that the value of the DAO at the initial distribution is presumably, I guess you're putting in your money, but like it won't be that high. It would take it would take building up the DAO to build an incentive for someone to want to do it.
Yeah. And what I worry about is that often with these things that can happen like unwittingly. Okay, we have one proposal here, one proposal there, made a bit of money, we've gone into this, we've done this particular endeavor, that particular endeavor, and bit by bit it's building up, and kind of there is no alarm bell that rings when the target is big enough for someone to attack. It will just kind of happen.
Yeah.
And that's what I worry about. So I'd rather that the admin SubDAO had 51% of the tokens and staked them.
Yeah, which you totally could, right? So you can configure the unstaking to whatever period you want. But you could have it doesn't necessarily have to be the admin SubDAO, it could be whatever, any SubDAO. But if it was staking, a significant portion of the distributed tokens, and you could even do a formula for however many are distributed, you double it and add a percent.
Yeah.
To stake. But yeah, that's not a bad show. I think these things are like really interesting and important to think about.
Yeah.
Just like, instead of willy-nilly just going out and spreading tokens all over the place, you might end up in trouble. But
that was the reason why we cornered you to have this call, actually, so that we didn't just willy-nilly release tokens.
I'm not saying you. I'm just I think because of the did you read that thing about AquaDAO?
I haven't yet, I haven't. I do need to do that.
No, I mean, you understand what a 51% attack is.
Yes.
That's what happened to them. It's just, it's good to be thinking about this. The other thing that I've been talking to someone about recently is this kind of alliance of DAOs doing token swaps to secure. Like, this is a very initial conversation, but having, multiple trusted DAOs do token swaps. So they hold some of your tokens and stake them, and you hold some of their tokens and stake them, and it just provides this like mesh security of DAOs, which is an interesting model as well.
It's going to sound like I'm just making this up, but I honestly had the exact same thought today, where I thought that
it's in the ether.
Yeah, and do you know what it reminds me? It's because of what happens with the banks, where some of the banks hold some of the other banks' money, and it just makes their network a lot more secure, because not only can one not fail, but like I don't know, it's kind of like they're like they're kind of interlinked, and in that linking is where the strength is. And I actually was thinking about that today, and I was wondering which DAOs there were on Juno that would be good DAOs to do that with. But I think that's another
I think keep it simple.
Yeah.
I think it's something to think about, and it might be something that I pursue to organize. And also, again, this is a little bit of a tangent and sidetrack, but also like a DAO mastermind of some sort, where DAO leaders or DAO people get together and kind of discuss DAOs and
Well, I
share
was
share
hoping
knowledge.
that's what would. I was hoping that's what would happen within the DAO Discord, because
Yeah.
so many of the DAOs actually start there. It would really make a lot of sense for the DAO team to hold these sorts of mastermind events, and so everybody gets a little bit of everybody else's shine and good ideas. So if we had a good idea over here, we just share it in the mastermind and vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's again, like it's tough because it's DAO's so early. One, we're in the depths of a bear. There's not a lot of action going on, but you can imagine as things pick up, and certainly as tokens become more valuable, then there'll be resources to build these types of things.
Yeah, well, there's only 12. We've got 12 months left, haven't we? And then it's the Bitcoin halving, and then all heck breaks loose.
Is this all predetermined? The future's already been written, and money goes up in 12 months.
Yeah,
I hope so. I can hang on for 12 months.
Yeah, it's we've done it so many times. We've done this dance before, haven't we? So
yeah.
So-
Well, you have. This is my first bear. It's nice. It's nice having the elders to hold my hand through it.
Oh yeah, well yeah, it's like it's guaranteed as long as day follows night, it's guaranteed. Like
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I knew it in 2020, and it just was. I know COVID happened, but it was just a nice year because you just know that things are going to get better. So yeah, we'll be fine. Okay, right. Let's move on to SubDAOs. Well, move on. We've already literally discussed SubDAOs for a while. What I wanted to discuss really was the controls that the main DAOs will have over the SubDAOs. Now, is it only that the main so if a SubDAO puts forward a proposal and the proposal passes on the SubDAO, can the main DAO put forward a proposal that says, no, I don't want that to happen, and then the SubDAO can't do it, and then the SubDAO's proposal is killed? How does that work?
Good question. So the way that it works is that the main DAO can perform any action it wants on the SubDAO. And the SubDAO can only perform the actions that the main DAO granted permission to do. Right. So to answer your question, I don't think that's how it works, but I mean, the way that these things are supposed to work is that you'd create a proposal where the outcome of the proposal would be to run code once it passes.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wouldn't be an opportunity for the main DAO to stop that code from running unless there was some kind of a veto vote, which as far as I know, that doesn't exist. And so what that means is that you need to be careful about who's on the SubDAOs and who's controlling the SubDAOs, and make sure that they're looking out for the best interest of the main DAO. And if there's if a proposal passes and the main DAO isn't happy with that proposal, then they can go and say, we're changing the membership of the SubDAO.
I'm drawing a diagram now, all right, and there's a top box, and in the top box it says main DAO.
Yeah.
Now underneath that, there's an arrow that points down, and beneath that I've got veto. I've got veto layer. All right, and that's going to be a sub-DAO of the main DAO. And then beneath that, I've got the sub-DAO proper. So say this particular sub-DAO is responsible for financing and managing a movie, right? So we got movie DAO. So the sub-DAO is supposed to be making a movie. Now let's say the veto layer, which is in between the main DAO and the sub-DAO, has got a panel of, let's say, 7 people, right? And the 7 people were voted in by the main DAO. And those 7 people are purely there to, because on that veto layer, you can say to the veto layer, right, the only power you have is to say no to certain proposals on your own sub-DAO, the movie sub-DAO, whilst they're in the voting stage. So I guess your only power is that you can kill proposals, like you can kill them in the crypt. You don't wait till they're finished. You can just say nope, erase, like delete. Then the sub-DAO, the movie DAO, they decide to make a porn movie, and the veto layer, they say, well, no, we're not here for that. We wanted you to make a cartoon, and you guys decided you wanted to make an adult movie, so no, that's not allowed, and they delete it. The veto layer then gets, because they've got only 7 people, they can run their votes so that they only last 1 day. And if they stay on top of the sub-DAO, and you have it in that kind of double structure, the veto layer then becomes quite a good safety layer for the sub-DAO without actually having control over it, because the main DAO is only giving it the ability to kill proposals. So it can't pass proposals, it can't vote on proposals, it can't even add its own proposals, can't do anything. All it can do is kill proposals. Would that work?
So it's currently, like, you can't do that currently, as far as giving a parent DAO. So you've got main DAO, you've got veto layer, and then you've got sub DAO. So you couldn't give veto layer, as it stands, only permission to kill a proposal and not be able to create a proposal. What you can do is you could give veto layer enough of a controlling stake of the sub-DAO that they only exercise their power to veto and they don't do anything else with it. But like, you can't actually program it. Well, I mean, you'd need a smart contract developer to program it to take away those rights. They parent DAOs by default automatically have full rights over the sub DAO, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
the problem is, if you give them enough voting weight to make sure they can possibly win any vote, then how do you stop them from voting and just winning?
Well, then, I mean, it comes down to making sure you have the right people on this panel. And the question that I was going to have is, why wouldn't you just have those same 7 people on the movie sub DAO?
Because I wanted the movie sub DAO to be open. So I want the movie sub DAO to have its own. People can just freely come and vote there.
So main members?
Yeah,
like
so
main DAO members.
So yeah, so the sub DAO for movies, I don't know. I guess the sub DAO for movies would have, or could it have its own? Could it have its own token? Let's say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say it's got its own token, and the veto layer. So it's got its own token, which is the movie token, and the veto layer has got a controlling stake or not. What I wanted was that the movie sub DAO would be open enough that anyone from anywhere can buy those tokens and participate in that particular SubDAO?
Possible. That's all very possible, but the way that the voting mechanism works is it's done based on membership, and membership is done based on how many tokens they have staked.
Yeah.
So in order for Veto DAO to have membership in order to do anything, then it would need to hold tokens.
Right.
As it stands right now, is it possible to have a veto power? It's possible, but it's not developed at the moment.
Okay.
And I think like I look, I'm not the total expert on this. I'm experienced, but I'm not a total expert. I could see an argument against, like how decentralized is it if you need to have your veto layer?
I think it becomes certainly less decentralized if you have a veto layer, but I think that there will be times when people are prepared to accept that trade-off. And I think it is in a situation where you might feel like the majority might do something that damages the main DAO. So say the main DAO is Disney, or the main DAO is like is supposed to be aimed at children, or like just supposed to be like a family friendly media company is the main DAO, let's say, and then you've got this SubDAO that decides to go and make an adult movie. I think that the SubDAO can damage the main DAO by doing that, and I think that sometimes you may want people to maybe just a group of people to be able to stop the masses, which may not be the masses. It may just be a small group of people who have got a very large stake in the movie DAO from doing something that damages the main DAO.
I see where you're coming from. I think there's other controls that you could implement. So, for instance, you could have a vesting schedule for funds, or you could have the SubDAO would have to create a proposal in order to get funds to do certain things, to start creating their movie. And if they're not behaving in the way that the main DAO likes, then you just stop.
Yes.
You stop funding them.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I totally see where you're coming from.
So
And
yeah,
there are ways to do it, but there's different control mechanisms that you could implement.
Yeah.
And so for instance, specifically with like a vesting schedule, the owner of the vesting schedule, if that's the main DAO who's funding this, say the movie SubDAO, they can cancel that vesting whenever they want. So if movie SubDAO stops producing or is misbehaving, then they just get cut off and
yes.
die essentially.
So effectively, what that means is that the SubDAO, we could keep it so that the SubDAO is making its own decisions, but once it's made the decision, the SubDAO then has to go to the main DAO to collect the resources that it's going to use,
or to like a funding SubDAO of some sort. It doesn't necessarily need to be the main DAO.
Right. Perfect. Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And so I mean, you can, the way that SubDAOs work, as far as I know, there's no limit to the depth of levels or the breadth of levels for sibling DAOs.
Yep.
And so you could create a whole network of things, and you can have certain SubDAOs that control access to funds, or certain SubDAOs that control access to whatever. Like, you can kind of make controls that way, I guess. Yeah. And any of these SubDAOs, just so that any of these SubDAOs can either be token or membership or NFT, and there can be a mix of all sorts of different configurations.
So now the structure I've got in mind now is that we've got an admin, a main DAO at the top. We've got an admin SubDAO, and then the admin SubDAO has got like a sister SubDAO, which is the funding SubDAO, which may be like an open funding SubDAO where people can vote or control that funding. And then there could be another funding SubDAO which is somewhat closed, where you've got a particular council of 5 to 10 names, and they can act maybe a little bit quicker and they can do whatever they want, but there'll be a smaller amount of funds that go into that SubDAO. So yeah, the main DAO can have quite a few SubDAOs which do different things, but I think this idea of a funding SubDAO is probably very important, because then the main DAO, when we do decide we want to fund something in particular, we can load up the funding SubDAO with some funds
from the main treasury.
Yeah.
I guess another, like a practical example is, if you're going to put your 10K in, you could be in control of a SubDAO that decides where that 10K goes.
Yeah.
Right. And so, or I mean, it's up to you, right? Like, instead of putting it into the main DAO treasury, you could have it in a SubDAO that you control, and no, that actually doesn't work, because then the main DAO can still
take it off me.
Well, they could ultimately, right? But like the thing is once there's more than like 3 members, then your risk starts being mitigated.
And not only that, I think then we can move with a lot more speed. So 3 or 4 members might say, okay, we want to take some money to start up a crypto exchange. Give me 50,000. The main DAO gives them 50,000, and that goes into a funding SubDAO, which is controlled by those 5 to 7 people. And yeah, they get on between them, and they go off and do what they're doing.
And then they don't have to go, back to the main DAO to say, we need to pay this developer this month.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the whole idea of the SubDAO.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. All right. I'm conscious of time because we're almost out of time. We've pretty much covered a lot of the things that are here. Control over SubDAOs by DAOs, when to launch. Staking incentives. Well, these are the last 2 points really that I really wanted to discuss. Right. So what do people get for staking? Is there a way to incentivize people who are staking by either giving them new tokens that the DAO is creating, or giving them a percentage or a payment from the tokens that the DAO has within its treasury? How can we incentivize staking?
Both are possible. You can do staking rewards with your your DAO's token, or you can do it with native tokens from the treasury. Either are possible.
Right. Can the main DAO have a SubDAO which is the rewards SubDAO, and take the rewards that it gives to stakers on any of its SubDAOs, or certain of its SubDAOs, and pay the rewards out to them from that particular SubDAO?
Well, so the staking rewards are done by a smart contract that is not tied. It is. I guess it is tied to a DAO. Give me a particular example for the movie DAO. The movie DAO is getting staking rewards.
Yep. Okay. So the movie DAO. Let's say the movie DAO brings in $100,000. The movie's finished. The movie's released. There's $100,000 payment has been made to the movie DAO. The movie DAO remains under this veto layer, even though we've agreed that we don't need it. And then above that veto layer is the main DAO. So the movie DAO is a SubDAO of the main DAO. Now, some people might be staking in, let's say, the football team DAO. Now, is it possible, regardless of where the rewards have come from, anybody who's staking the main CRDD token in one of these DAOs, let's say the movie DAO uses the CRDD token, they can receive rewards from the rewards SubDAO to be paid out to them. Let's say that the payments that the movie SubDAO has received is 100,000 stablecoin USDC, and we've put that in the rewards SubDAO. Can that now start to be distributed to stakers in
To anyone who's staking CRDD?
Yeah.
Yes is the short answer. I think so you just need to be thinking about how you're going to configure your SubDAOs. Does the movie SubDAO need to have CRDD tokens being staked into it, or can it be its own token? Yes is the short answer to that question. For sure, you could do that. It's just about like how you kind of. So the way that the staking rewards contract currently works, if you were to try and distribute that USDC, it would be tied to anyone who's staking CRDD in the main DAO. Is how, like, it's a contract per DAO. But you're saying if anyone is staking, it's possible. I think that one would require custom code. But off the shelf, currently, you could do staking rewards to your main DAO. Anyone staking in your main DAO. And you could also have your movie DAO have its own tokens, which have its own staking rewards and could be converted to CRDD in the future.
Right. Okay. So what we would need then is for every SubDAO to then, I guess, have its own particular rewards smart contract.
It would. Yes. Yeah. Correct. So you could have, it's possible to have all the SubDAOs use CRDD as their staking token. But as far as I understand, without customizing the current staking rewards contract, you couldn't have a staking rewards contract that distributes to all of those DAOs.
And plus, that also does limit the DAO itself, because at one quite significant fundraising method or just separation method would be for each of the SubDAOs to have their own tokens. That really, it's just going to make a lot of sense for the SubDAOs. It
does make a lot of sense, and I think it makes it easier to administer as well.
Yeah. And I guess the SubDAOs, if they do have their own tokens, they can be airdropped to people who own the main DAO tokens or the main DAO NFTs. I guess you
easily.
Could, right.
Totally.
Yeah. So that would probably be a good way to do it. So you own I don't know, a certain amount, 10,000 CRDD. You've got them staked in the main DAO. This new SubDAO is created, and then you then get airdropped your percentage of the value of those SubDAO tokens. You can keep them, sell them, or whatever, but if you stake them, then when the rewards come from the completed movie, you will then get your percentage share via rewards.
Yeah, you could do it that way.
Okay. Right, perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to keep for that is that each SubDAO has its own rewards, smart contract.
That's right.
I think that's it. I I think that's it. Just right on time. So it's taken us an hour. Is there anything else you think we should be considering that we haven't covered with regards to the structure of the DAOs and the sub-DAOs?
I think again, it's going to be once you start building, once you start having more conversations, then the questions will come.
Yeah.
Like, and the other side of it is don't like be rigid in thinking about making decisions now without actually getting out into the market and figuring things out. Like, I think that I guess maybe that's more my point, is the market will force questions and decisions, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. That's why. Yeah, I was quite eager to state these should be theoreticals, and hopefully, once we get started, the DAO members will decide upon the path to take. The main thing, really, which is what I wanted to get to grips with, was what sorts of structures could be possible, and how we could build in the future with the SubDAOs and the different various types of controls and things like that, which we've really dug into very well, I think.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have a better understanding?
Yeah, much better.
Oh, good.
Much
I mean,
better.
and the other thing is kind of what I alluded to earlier, is that DAO is still developing at a rapid pace. So, you could be designing stuff now that is redundant and
Yeah.
The other side of me saying all of this is it's good to be thinking about this stuff, certainly, from an early stage.
And not only that, but they may create new tools that open other doors that we haven't really considered yet. So
Exactly that.
So, okay. All right. I'm going to call it there. I think we've really made some good grounds. I'm still planning on launching at some point over the weekend, and then having another meeting with probably the website complete next Sunday. So cause less harm. Thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, and your patience as we get to grips with the opportunities that we have on CryptoSI DAODAO and Juno.
Yeah, not at all. I love this stuff. This is fun for me.
Yeah,
I'd
same.
like to second that, cause less harm. Thanks a lot. You made it sound. Basically, I understand. I understood the majority of that, and I'm not very tech savvy. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. And certainly, if you have questions, like just reach out. I'm totally approachable.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming. And I'm gonna put this up on YouTube tomorrow. And yeah, it's been a really awesome discussion. And yeah, it's opened my eyes, and I really now I've got a very clear picture of how things can be put into place. So this is very exciting. So thanks very much, guys. Take care.
Cheers, guys. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.